本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。What's good, Internet? It's Friday, December 4th, and you're listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 364. I'm your host, Austin Walker, and I'm joined for kind of a quiet, smaller group today. Intimate. We're just going to bring it in. It's intimate. We're going back. Cado is here.
Hello.
And so is Patrick.
This is kind of the closest we will get to like the original Vice
OG.
Gaming new podcast.
Yeah, it's true.
Except Cado is here, but it's the closest. Cado's always here, so it's the closest we can ever. This is the closest to the bone we can ever get to the original podcast, where sometimes you would edit it and sometimes I would edit it, and I just threw it. I ran it through Levelator. That's how you got your mixing.
Were we ever so young as this? Were we ever so young as God? Was it 4 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
A little over 4 years ago at this point? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Weird.
Time is fucked.
Time is fucked. Time is fucked. How's everyone doing? It's December now, which is
a December to remember, you know?
It's cold as hell in New York.
It got cold tonight. Like today, like overnight, it is now cold. We're now in the cold era.
What does cold mean, though? I feel like because
cold means
it's not. Yeah, go ahead.
Cold is it's 41 outside, but cold really means, at least for me, especially during this pandemic, is I'm wearing shorts right now because it's like 90 degrees in my house.
Right.
Because the radiators do not turn off ever.
The thing that ends up being tough is like once the radiators are on and the windows are open, you end up getting these moments where like my house is cold and also boiling.
Yeah.
Because it depends on if I'm sitting near a window or near the radiator or both, and so you end up getting this mix of things. But yeah, like it has been unseasonably warm here for the last couple of weeks, and so it's starting to finally get here like to winter time.
Or what you get is it's reasonable during the day, like you can hit like 42 degrees and sunny, and if it's like only slightly windy, like you're good. But then the nighttime weather is like in the morning. I usually take my youngest to go for a walk with our dog, and it's like 17 degrees out. Like I can't bundle up a 7-month-old enough to like subject you to this. You have to live with this the rest of your life. I don't need you to do this to you at 7 months, so you can learn to hate winter on your own and live here because of the cost of living and make your own choices in life.
Yeah, are you ready for your daughter to do the same thing that you did, which was like, fuck Chicago, I'm leaving?
Why?
You think that's the natural
that was not my mentality. I always the reason
you chase jobs.
Yeah, I when I was in graduating college, I always sort of had like vague intentions. Like the folks at 1UP were always like, I'd known a lot of those people since I was like 14, and they were like, I don't know, whenever you graduate college, let us know, and we'll. I don't know. There was a lot more money back then, and where you could just be like, just let us know when you graduate. I don't know. We'll figure out somewhere to stick you. And then Luke Smith, who I was working under at News at the time, who's now the design director on Destiny at Bungie, was running the news at 1UP, and he decided to go work for Bungie. And I think towards the tail end of Halo 3, and they were like, "Hey, could you be here in like 2 weeks after you graduate?" And I was like, okay, yeah,
figure that shit out. Yeah,
I remember I had a conversation with my now wife where we've been dating for a little over a year, and I was like, I found I have to go to California in like 2 weeks. So, I'm 21. I don't really. How do I put this? I think I'm in love with you. I am not really in a position where I want to move in with a girl yet, but I can't ask you to move to California, quit your job, like go across the country where you have like very little family and be like, also find your own place. Seems like a raw deal. Like doesn't seem fair.
That's not great.
So do you want to move to California and move in together? And we'll find out really quickly whether like, I think I pitched it. I was like, we're going to find out if we want to get married like really fast. And we did find that out, like really, it like worked like perfectly, and was like, "Oh, this is great," and it was fine. But so no, it wasn't. That's where all the jobs were, and I always knew I wanted to come back. But I guess to circle around, yeah, like I have always like I think people should leave where they grew up for some measure of time. And the pitch I've always given to people is you can come back. Like the worst thing to do is like get old enough where then you have obligations that
Right.
prevent you from leaving because someone gets sick or your job status prevents you financially from doing, like, you could just like do it in your 20s.
And then,
Yeah, there's all sorts of reasons. Once you hit 30, like shit gets complicated for all sorts of reasons. And it's like, if in your 20s, if you can just leave and hate it, well, at least you got a good story. You can say, actually, California sucks shit, and I don't ever want to go back there. Whatever, man. She goes there, like programs apps or something, and like pays for my retirement. Like, go, like, Godspeed. Writing about video games ain't gonna do it.
Yeah.
Oh, we're sitting here waiting for your mother's company to get bought to pay for your college. So,
incredible. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I very much did the thing of like my late 20s was, I mean, obviously I'd already not lived at home in Jersey for years, but then I really, in my mind, like from 25 to 30 was me being in grad school. And so that's just like, that time may as well not have existed. I may as well have spent it in the Phantom Zone, just like walked into a cube and emerged back to New York years later. And it's like, I don't hate that. In some weird way, it was like, yeah, okay, this is like my time in apprenticeship somewhere, you know what I mean? And then yeah, you hit 30 and it's like, shit, I gotta move back somewhere. I gotta see people again. I gotta like be connected to my roots in some way. And also I gotta get a job because I gotta get a real job, because it turns out academia money for teaching is nothing and my bills are high, and I can't even secure a permanent job in academia because no one can, because there aren't enough jobs. And so yeah, it was a fun journey that I think I definitely mapped to that, like, go out into the world in your 20s, yeah, you know, find some roots at 30, as just like a best practice for me. It worked out, you know.
Yeah, I had no money in my 20s. I came back to the Midwest with absolutely in debt. No. And
I was making like $12K every year. That last 25, from 25 to 30, I was not making money at all.
Well, even this Midwest, I moved when I had was being reasonably paid, but like my wife was like just figuring out her career. Like, it was a kind of a late bloomer in terms of finding a career track. So like, even when I was making, I mean, like, making 65 in San Francisco is not particularly good money. Like, I mean, you can do it, but it's you're not living off the hog. But at the same time, I was like, well, my wife, who was my roommate, was, you know, making a fraction of that. So the 65 was like even less impressive when you're like compensating for all that. And so it came back to the Midwest with just like, there's a reason we moved in with my mom. It was like,
fuck it. Listen, I had no shame. Zero shame for that shit. Like,
that's how I paid off my our credit card debt. It was like 2 credit cards. We're going to spend the next 6 months just not paying for Comcast and rent, and get that under our belt before
get that under control.
Anything
Absolutely. Anyway, weird diversion this morning. I feel like this was a response to us having 3 people, and also not being like, none of us are like itching to talk about the stuff we got today. Yeah. This is just one of those things that happen sometimes.
It's a weird week.
It's a weird week. I feel like things could have broken different, and I would have been a little happier with games. Like
if Best Buy sent you a collector's edition of Cyberpunk 2077, and you could question whether you want to play it. Have you seen all these people getting these collector's editions?
Is it like out in the world now?
Yeah, to the point. Did you read that shitty statement that?
I did see that. Is that why they put out that shitty statement?
Yes, they. I don't have it in front of me. If you want to pull it up, it's like half funny and then like morbid to a degree that is like maybe not. They made like not a COVID joke, but like a COVID despair sort of joke that was, I don't know. Maybe it's because anything they do, you just meet with a certain amount of skepticism that even when they're trying to be funny, you can't help but sort of like roll your eyes. I
think the irony that
especially for their social media team, which is like really stepped in it, like has really put, however that game turns out, you know, we'll know more about that next week. But I think the earned bad will that they have over the last 18 months just makes it so immediately if they say anything, even if like in given a more neutral arbiter, it would be like, oh, what, maybe in bad taste, but like not the end of the world. Whereas Cyberpunk, it's like, fucking get them, like get them with the knives. But yeah, a bunch of people have gotten collector's editions of the
so funny
Xbox and PlayStation versions, and it's like, I think that's how we've learned. Like, there's like a 60 gig patch for like the day one on the on some of these machines.
That's a whole. That's
just a whole game.
That's
yeah.
I mean, I guess
when you go gold in October.
Yeah, right. Well, that too. But again, it's not a 500 gig. It's not the whole game in the way that the Call of Duty shit is like, whatever, 250 gigs or whatever that was when that dropped. But yeah, no, that message was basically like, hey, don't stream or do recordings or anything like that before December 9th. We will send Max Tack, the guys who take down videos. Max Tack is a thing in the world of Cyberpunk. It is, God.
Okay. That could be an outside of Cyberpunk thing for, you know what I mean? Like I looked at that and didn't even read it that way. It was just like, oh sure, that's just like the shitty firm that you employ.
They're going to send the super cops at you is basically what they mean. Which is supposed to be tongue in cheek, but like when you're making a game in which the Max Tack are the baddies, there's a degree to which it's like, you shouldn't be the people sending them, and then at the end is the thing where it's like, we'd love after that date, we'd love for you to stream everything like there's no tomorrow. It's 2020. Who knows? Maybe there isn't. Like, okay,
Christ.
Just you're not Patrick. You're not Cado. You know what I mean? Like your company. Yeah. I just can't.
And people are mad at you constantly. So just like chill.
Just chill.
Delete that last line. Like everyone gets that you're going to send takedown requests for a big story game that quote unquote gets leaked. A week early. But because that's the weird world that we live in. But
totally. I don't know. So we'll see how that game shakes out. God, next week, huh? 7 days from today, it's out.
Mm-hmm.
Today as of recording. By the time people are hearing this, it will be out.
The 10th, right? Is that when? That's when.
Yeah, that's right.
Out?
That's right.
So I guess maybe that's like what, Wednesday night. When does New Zealand get it?
Right, exactly. Maybe that's why. That's probably why that streaming thing they said was like the night of the 9th or whatever. Probably.
When does New Zealand get it.com?
Does that not work?
No, apparently not.
Okay. Well. Oh well. Good try. Good hustle. That doesn't mean we didn't play anything this week, though. I think maybe, Patrick, the biggest thing you and I both dipped into, I don't know, Cado, if you've had a chance to play, was Immortals Fenyx Rising. A game that last week we were like, hey, there's reviews for that now? Okay, how is that? What's going on with that? And that, for people who don't remember, is a kind of colorful Greek mythology-inspired open-world game from Ubisoft. That when it first debuted 2 years ago, I think that the vibe was like, hey, they're taking some of their Assassin's Creed Odyssey kind of stuff and leaning even further in that direction. And then as we started to see more and more of the game, it became very much like, oh, this is Ubisoft chasing Breath of the Wild, in terms of open world design and stuff like that. And there was like when I'm playing this game, I really turn into like the most generic video game critic, like fans of the genre, except I'm not saying that this is for fans of the genre. In fact, I'm saying maybe this is not for fans of the genre, but it's
it depends on what you mean by genre, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I end up feeling very like there's something about this game that makes me think about it in a very generic way where I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. Like the characters are there. Everything is it works. Like it works. I'm not especially enjoying myself during this.
But you're not offended by it, which in some ways is like a worse place for it to land.
Yeah, because it means that I think it's a fairly bland open world game in the style of Breath of the Wild. I put, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours into something like that, 4 or 5 hours, maybe a little bit more than that. I went back to it 2 nights ago after thinking I was done with it, and put some more time in. And when we say it's like Breath of the Wild, I think what we mean is big open world. You get abilities fairly early on.
It has a stamina meter.
You're the stamina
sort
meter.
You could just keep eating potions and make that stamina meter rendered meaningless. You want to climb that
you
giant
get those
thing
way faster
in the least efficient way possible. Well, just keep eating these stamina potions while you're climbing, which again, like that's that is by design.
That's in Zelda too. It's just it felt like it was a thing in Zelda where like you had to spend time to. Like, all right, I'm gonna go to. Really, what it comes down to is the entire process for me. From I want to climb this thing, I don't have what I need for it. Let me go get some stamina mushrooms and stuff. Cook up some meals, come back, do it. It felt like a journey and felt like it like very charming to me because you have all these little moments of Breath of the Wildness happening. You get the little musical number when you cook. You know, you're finding the stamina stuff, and it feels cool to be like, oh, that's that stamina fish. Whereas here, it's like blue mushrooms give you stamina. They're everywhere. Hit triangle to get the blue mushrooms, then hit right on the D-pad to eat the blue mushrooms. It's very quick.
Also, open these chests,
seamless.
and these chests in this world also have mushrooms that you can then go put in this potion mix, and there will be some equivalent of the look at this cute character doing the mix, and then like backing off because it smells kind of toxic while you're making, like, there's all they really try and hit beat. It's like, I'm not offended by the game. I think it's fine. Yeah. There are moments like that where what you're chasing feels. It's like less egregious to have a stamina meter in a world that feels very much like Breath of the Wild, because I think more games should rip off Breath of the Wild and should be egregious about it and then go their own way. The thing that like actually kind of bothered me was like trying to go for the same sort of cutesy, we're cooking, and here's like a goofy little animation that tries to lend some character to the fairly bland main character that you're playing as. I mean, you can create your own character, but there's not a lot of personality imbued in them, and they like that's where a lot of the personality comes out of a voiceless character in Breath of the Wild. And here they're a voice character with also these sort of like generic emotive sequences. That's the stuff where I was like, it feels like you're grasping at like what are the other things we could take from Breath of the Wild when it could have gone its own way, or just let me make it in the thing and move on. I don't need the goofy animation sequence.
Yeah, and you can button through it, but it like buttons through the stages of it. I don't know if you noticed this. I
haven't even tried.
Yeah,
no.
So there's like a you just let me set the game up a little bit. You are, like I said, it's pulling off of Greek mythology. Typhon, who is I want to say brother of Zeus, or he's not a Titan because he wants to resurrect the Titans. But Typhon, who is this giant, wants to kill all of the Olympian gods and remake the world in his image, has successfully done that for the most part. And I guess in a last act of desperation, Zeus goes to talk to Prometheus, who I guess has the ability to kind of tell stories and make them real. Like, I don't know if what we're doing is real or not, or if he's just like if the whole game is a hypothesis, like, well, hypothetically this could help us. But because
the way he pitches it to Zeus is sort of like, no, there is someone who can, because Zeus wants his help, and he's like, well, no, actually there's a hero among the mortals that can actually do this for us, and let me tell you their story. And then like the whole conceit of the game is that there is narration placed over your playthrough that is about your
it's these two characters bickering. It's Zeus and Prometheus kind of bickering and bantering, describing the actions that you're doing nonstop in the intro. And then like it slows down a little bit, I'd say, once you get to the actual big open world area that's connected to like the mainland. But it's still pretty, like, every event has them saying some shit.
Any sort of like main story sequence has something where they are butting in, and the tone, it's something where I understand what they were going for. I can imagine the pitch from someone being like, hey, we're gonna the people generally think like the Olympians are like enormous pieces of shit and like treated themselves, the people around them, and the mortals like garbage. And so what if we did that and it was like a little cartoonish, and it's like they're gonna have like some banter between others, maybe a little witty, like we're not gonna do God of War, we're gonna do God of War, but like not quite Saturday morning cartoon, not quite South Park, like somewhere in between.
Zeus is jealous that the main character's brother fucked Achilles better than him, so it's not like it's. Because that's the thing, is like an hour in, I'm like, I guess this is like good Breath of the Wild for kids, but like there's a lot of fuck jokes in this game, but maybe they're framed in a way where it's supposed to be like the parents will get it, but the kids won't.
I don't think like a 5 or 6 year old is going to play this and like pick.
But also, I should be clear, I don't think it's like sexy or horny. It's this is very old man mad that he was worse in the sack than someone else vibes. It just happens to be old man who's mad that his gay sex with Achilles wasn't as good. And so it's like it's a tired formula, but it's also, I think that there's going to be people who respond to it just by the nature of them be willing to have like gay relationships.
It's different
briefly right away,
I just don't think it's particularly funny.
No,
like
I don't think it's particularly funny or particularly like it's not good character work, nor is it great punchlines. You know.
Right. Yeah. I don't like it's not adding anything to the game. If anything, it's like meaningfully subtracting where if I could just play the game with that stuff turned off, at least so far, I didn't play as much as you. I played like 4 or 5 hours. I don't know that I've learned anything from their band. Like I could just be playing the game and progressing.
Yeah.
And
have I learned anything? That's more like a DVD commentary track, but not from the people who made the game.
No,
just from two people
like
watching
riff tracks
it.
or
It's
something.
like riff tracks or MST3K. Yeah.
Yes,
but that and the thing is, like on paper, I think I say yes to that. I'm like, yeah, fuck it.
I see how we get to like someone being like, yeah, that's going to be a unique spin, and like that's going to like ground the player and like give them some storytelling in an open world where they are kind of doing their own thing, and it's not always going to be cutting to a cutscene, even though they have that stuff here with characters, But so again, like, it's weird because it doesn't work for me, but like I sort of appreciate like in the way that the little animation in the potion makes me cringe. This stuff, it still makes me cringe, but like I appreciate the swing. Like I see what they were going for. They went for a thing. It's unique. I haven't seen it done like this in particularly many games. So even though like I kind of tune it out as I'm playing. At least comes across as one of the more interesting aspects of what they tried to imbue the game with.
Yeah. So, you end up on this island. Everyone here is turned to stone. You find your brother's sword, which was a gift from Achilles that he got. The joke is, after the first joke about this, is like based on his success in a battlefield. Definitely not in bed. Definitely not in bed. And then they return to it and make it extremely explicit. Not extremely explicit, but extremely clear. Explicit means something else there. And you set off to try to rescue everyone who's been turned to stone. You realize that Typhon, this ancient giant monster, has been doing all this shit. And you eventually kind of make your way from this shipwrecked place to a mainland, and you end up meeting some other Greek mythological figures, getting a cool bird. Did you get the bird, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay.
No, wait. Oh, the bird that's dying and that you have to go.
Yeah, you got to resurrect it.
That's the last thing. Okay. I needed the last quest that I end up getting distracted with a bunch of side stuff.
Get it? It's a phoenix, so it comes back to
yeah.
Well, I guess it's not. It might not be a phoenix, but it definitely comes back to life and is covered in fire. So that to me sounds like a phoenix.
Does that give you a new ability?
Yeah, you can among the abilities that you have, this one lets you hold L1 and hit, I guess, whatever. What am I playing this on? I'm playing this on PS5. Hit circle to like make it harass an enemy and like shoot it with like charge down into it, like dive bomb it. Basically, it's like one of the many attacks you can unlock that I don't necessarily know that the game does a good job of explaining why it's different than any other attack.
You can also, this part is so strange. This once you get 2 hours in and the world kind of opens up and you can like continue the story stuff and the game seems to like want you to like funnel a certain way and then get distracted along the way. I ended up just doing a bunch of side stuff just to like see how the upgrade trees work. Like it opens up like a shitload of stuff immediately. Like you go to this like, I don't know what, like Hall of the Gods or something, which is like this little kind of like centralized place that you have like, this is where you upgrade your stamina by getting this collectible. This is where you upgrade your health by getting this collectible. This is where you make your potions by getting these collectibles. Like it's all those little stations, and it's one of the areas you can fast travel to. And one of the areas where you can upgrade like your weapons or your personal skill sets. There's just like, there's like quite literally like 25 skill trees just right off the bat. And none of it's blocked off. Obviously you have to go down paths to get to things, but it's just like, here's like 25 different things, like your sword, your axe. Like those are two like basic weapons you get, you can like have at all times. There's just like a ton of things. And it's just strange because usually games will like keep you in a tiny funnel and then slowly open you up, and then they're like, all right, go wild. Like at this point you've probably figured out how you want to play, and you can just kind of figure out how you want to spec from here. Here they're just like, here's all of them, thus making it very difficult to figure out what you should even invest in, because you have like 25 options. It's like, I don't know, do I want like 20% damage on the combo finisher, or do I want like better stun on the arrow power up? Or you can spend those upgrade points, of which there are like 1,000 different things to collect to upgrade. To get like brand new powers. Like one of the ones you get, the first ones you get is these like armbands that allow you to pick up rocks and chuck them to do like the same equivalent thing that they have in Breath of the Wild. But then you can also like just buy new on that spoke where you're like hitting L1 and I think I'm hitting circle and it shoots these spikes out of the ground that like do almost an instant stun to enemies.
Yeah.
And it's very useful. Like, but it also seems like the kind of meaningful upgrade that you would find at the end of a dungeon and you get rewarded for. And the game's just like, I don't know, put 6 points into that and you can have like this really major meaningful upgrade immediately.
And that made me realize that like there's a degree to which you then can't build the shrines in that game around having those things because so in Breath of the Wild on the plateau you get all your abilities, right? Get, or just about. I don't think you get. Maybe you don't get Cryonis there. Maybe you get Cryonis somewhere else.
No, you get just 4.
You get Cryonis there. No, you get them all, right?
Stasis,
Cryonis. You don't get the photography. That's the only thing you don't get. That's in that list of things.
Right.
So yeah, you get Stasis, Cryonis, the bombs, right?
Yeah.
And is there anything else? Magnesis. You can magnet things. Whereas here in the kind of plateau equivalent, the opening little island that you're on, I think the only stuff that you end up getting for sure is the glider, the gauntlets, which are sort of like magnesis because you can kind of pull something towards you and it looks a lot like a magnesis, but it doesn't control like that. Then it's like you pick up boxes and throw boxes and push boxes, right?
Yeah.
And then like you have a sword, you have a bow, you have a hammer, which is like sword and hammer are just light attack, heavy attack. Heavy attack does like more stamina damage or whatever. It pushes enemies to being in a stun state quicker, and the sword is quicker, is just like a faster damage dealer. Which means that like when you get the thing that does the spears in the ground that knock things up or stun them or whatever, those can't be used in shrines, in the shrine equivalents, I'm guessing. Unless maybe later they're just shrines you can go into and can't beat because you didn't get that upgrade yet, but I really doubt that. I really suspect they're all built around that core set of things because otherwise you would have the situation where people can go into a shrine and not be able to complete it. But that means that the shrines end up being not as interesting as I wanted them to be. I mean, like that is, I think, whether or not the shrines in Zelda are as exciting or interesting for you or not is a big part of whether or not that game works for you, because either it's fun to open up the puzzle box and be like, what the fuck are they going to give me this time? What weird, puzzle design am I going to hit where I'm going to have to think about using a power in a new way, even though it's a power I've had for 30 hours and I just like have forgotten that I could use it this way. Oh, I can use the cryo to like make a stop where this rock is going to, hit it, and then I can break the cryo pillar and the rock is going to fall and and in comparison, a lot of the equivalent things here, which are called vaults, are pretty. I'm not having a great time with them. Did you get to the one with like the shooting rocks through walls of other rocks and crates and shit one? No. There's so many of them; it would be very hard for you to like hit the same.
Yeah,
ones
there's like there's a handful that you're forced to get through in like the tutorial section, and then the game. There are like these little like kind of red rocks that open up in the world that you jump into, and that's where you at the end you can get like Zeus's lightning bolts, which are going to then increase your stamina.
I've started getting Aphrodite's tears, I want to say, from one of them.
There's a collectible item that is then used to infuse an upgrade for one of the 1,000 things that you can upgrade in the game. But yeah, this game has puzzles and puzzles and puzzles and puzzles and puzzles. You love puzzles? This game's got puzzles. You want more puzzles? There are more puzzles. And it's not even just the vaults. It's like there are things called myths, which are like one I did last night was there's a statue, and the statue is staring at like 4 tablets that you have to move around to make the image make sense. It's you're like just shifting around these squares to make the 4 of them line up properly. It was like fine. It was one of those things where it's like I'd rather this was just on an iPad so I could like slide them around, and instead I'm like moving this character and like grudgingly like moving these blocks, and like all the puzzles are fine. Whereas there were plenty of just fine shrines in Breath of the Wild. Like not every shrine was I
said, don't you know what? Maybe it's fine to move on. Fine Shrines is a good song. By Purity Ring. It's good. Purity Ring's a good band. They should put out more music. Why haven't they put out more music, Patrick?
Is this your demand?
Yes, they're a little appropriative. Their shit still kind of slaps. It would be cool to have another It would be cool to have another Purity Ring album.
Is that like the in-person app?
They put out an album
like,
this year. I haven't heard it yet because of COVID. I take it back.
Did they pay us about this? Did they pay us for this?
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm yelling.
This is just Austin.
This came out in April,
himself.
which is
Yeah,
also
you could have
when
had this right when COVID started. This could have been like
also
a
when that
comfort
Childish
album.
Gambino album dropped, and I found out about that last week, and I was like, "Damn, he put out an album. No one mentioned
what?
it." See, this is what I'm saying.
That was probably like a double disc one, double disc LP.
Yeah, that was in March. She put that out March 22nd. Bad
That's
idea.
not real.
Bad idea.
I'm not even sure you can blame him at that point. Like, that stuff is decided 18 months in advance.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, and like I think the like where the lows of shrines in Breath of the Wild, like it has a much, its floor is a lot higher than Immortals' floor, where it's just like a lot of the puzzles they seem, okay. I did a puzzle. I have not done many that like at the end I go, fuck yeah, like that was like a really interesting way to play with the abilities I have here. It feels more perfunctory, and which is true of like a lot of puzzles in a lot of games. It's just a way of like mixing up what the player is doing. Whereas Breath of the Wild like really tried to like stretch your brain on what was possible with the power sets that you had in front of you. And instead in Immortals, at least in the 5 hours I played, is a lot of like, yep, okay, that was just kind of like any incidental combat. It's like, yep, that was a combat.
Yeah.
Yep, that was a puzzle. And like the highs don't feel all that great.
I end up often feeling like I can feel the cleverness of the designer in trying to make the thing with the tools that they had.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that I feel clever doing the thing. So the example there is this one that I did where I'm inside the kind of shrine space, the vault space, where you can't climb on everything. You can't you don't have like freedom the way you do outside in the same way. You kind of have to solve their puzzles to move forward. And what was happening is, in front of me, there was a gap, like a little chasm, then a pillar, or like a long pillar with a bunch of crates and stuff on it. And then there's more stuff behind the crates and stuff, but I can't see beyond the crates and stuff. Then right in front of me is like a little trench. And on the right-hand side, a big boulder will appear, and then it'll roll down the trench. At any point, I can pull a switch, and a big burst of air will shoot through the trench, which will then shoot the ball out. Shoot the big orb out, the sphere, into that big wall of crates, slowly breaking down the wall of crates until finally I can get one of these things past the wall of crates to the next line, either which is another wall of crates I have to break down, or into a different trench where it'll roll into like a stoppy spot where it'll hit a button and it will let me advance further down this like
classic
little
stoppy spot.
A classic stoppy spot dungeon design. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't ever want to be a puzzle for me shouldn't just be, when do I pull the switch? Or especially in this one where it's like, let me just wait and pull the switch again because I have to slowly break my way through these walls. This isn't even a thing where if I do it right the first time, I'm going to land it. I have to just like hit the switch, hit the switch, hit the switch. And that's not a particularly heroic action. I can't tell a story about that sounds fun because it's my character standing in front of a switch, hitting it over and over again. And that's not like a clever use of their powers. That's just hitting the switch. That's just doing the thing that this space was designed for in a way that feels like repetitive and like a factory because of the way that it is just like a bunch of conveyor belts connected with switches that you're hitting. And that is not a particularly fun thing to do, and it doesn't narrativize well, and it doesn't feel like, weird. Zeus shut the fuck up about that. Prometheus didn't have some fun story about how I stood in place and hit a switch 30 times in a row. And at the end of it, I was like, I got a thing. It's fine. I think I might have gotten a Zeus's lightning bolt or whatever, and it's like, okay, like that. I spent 15 minutes doing that. I don't feel particularly moved from that. It's a very, which is a disappointment because I would love to have another one of these types of games, but that stuff has to be so on point. I feel a lot like, not that this game, I think this game will do well. I think this game will do. I think
it's a good game that when I think people started, I want to have the Breath of the Wild itch scratched. Just by point of comparison, that like your expectations start going, even if you're someone that bounced off Breath of the Wild because of certain
this is actually maybe
design choices.
A good thing for a lot of people who don't want to deal with. We've said this before.
The weather, or don't want to deal with weapons breaking.
Yeah, totally. This is the numbers go up in this game, baby. Like you have so many who wanted a combat system with way more options because that's a focus here. If you want to invest in the bird that does a dive bomb attack versus doing the uppercut, knock up, air combat stuff, you can do that. I don't know that the game is particularly hard. I kept going into areas where it was like, listen, turn back. This is not safe for you. And I was like, no, I'll be fine. Trust me. And I was fine.
Well, especially if you do any of the parrying, which,
right.
That's like one of the,
dude,
at least one of the interesting.
The big axe swings knock people back in such a way that like I was able to clear out trash mobs and hit the main boss in a certain area. I'm sure there was stuff in there that would knock me on my ass that just like out leveled me or whatever.
Right.
But I was in an area where on screen it was like, you should come back here later. And what I'm doing is like R2, 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 clearing out a huge, like 13 dudes trying to jump me. And like, this isn't it, which I guess like speaks to the thing of like, my biggest complaint with the combat is like, how do you beat a Cyclops? The same way you beat a Minotaur, the same way you beat a Chimera. You lock onto it, you hit R2 to lower its stamina or break its guard. You sidestep and hit the square button to do an instant dodge, which puts you in witch time from Bayonetta, where everything slows down for a minute and you can get a bunch of good hits in. And then you hit R1 a bunch to do extra damage, and you've won that fight. There are like some slight differences with certain enemies, but it feels very like. It's like that moment where you start to think for yourself in a Dark Souls game, like, oh, I just get at their ankles. I just get in there at their ankles, and it's all the same. Except that in the Souls games, they mix it up occasionally. You don't only do that in Bloodborne. Eventually,
they have enemies with like a larger sweep that's going to punish you because you're being lazy and trying to apply the same thing. And maybe this game has equivalents of that.
I bet it does.
Goes along.
100%. I just haven't seen them yet.
But yeah, it is. My guess is, I think go with. I guess the thing with this game is going with like the right expectations, because if you're just going in to scratch a Breath of the Wild itch, well, like there are certain indications that sequel is coming out next spring, and so maybe just like go play the game again because it's been 4 years and
shit, really?
That's the rumor.
Yeah, right?
Oh, are you saying it's been 4 years? Or
which one? It's been 4 years.
Both,
or the sequel comes out
honestly, I hadn't heard about that yet.
It's been. Has it been 4? It'll be 4 this spring, right?
Yeah,
is that right?
That was my thought.
Right.
That like because that wasn't because that was because that game came out in March after we launched.
Yeah,
and so
fuck.
Yeah, I suspect all of this March 31st nonsense that Nintendo is engaging in has something to do with a Breath of the Wild and possibly another Switch and all that stuff happening in the spring. So
you heard it here first, folks.
Write it up, aggregate it. That's
Patrick
no
Klepek
sourcing.
reports.
Patrick Klepek reports from his ass that Breath of the Wild 2 in the spring.
Anyway, the thing that I realized while playing it was very much, if I didn't write about why I liked Breath of the Wild, which is a process by which you get very close to why you like something. I may have come into this thinking I would have really liked it, and then learned what it was about Breath of the Wild I really liked because of the differences with this. That to me does not.
Well, it's especially we were talking
mean?
about. Yeah, and I think when we were talking about like the PlayStation 5 activities and the notion of friction.
Yeah,
this game, not surprising for something from Ubisoft that is, Breath of the Wild is such an interesting game in the same way that we talk about the Souls games, in that like. It's a game with a lot of friction that ended up having mass appeal in a way that you might not have expected. Like every Zelda game is going to be big, but like Breath of the Wild, and especially the ways that it asks of the player in a way that maybe not necessarily a game of that scale would, and it just happened to resonate. The Immortals takes a look at some of those friction points and says, well, how can we take some of the fun stuff from Breath of the Wild, like climbing everywhere? You can climb everywhere in this game, and it's got stamina, even if the stamina is rendered irrelevant as long as you're, preparing properly. But it's still fun to like navigate your way up a space and have some sort of pushback. Like there is still some pushback. Like there's a stamina meter that is going down. You're thinking about that as you're going from one outcrop to the next. the fact that it's a big open world that you can glide around to. Although often, I don't know if you get like an upgrade that makes yourself go faster, but it's often the case. Like
there's like a hold down square to go into like zoom mode. It also costs less stamina in that mode, which is interesting. It's like you're cruising much faster. It's super cheap. You should get that upgrade if you keep playing this game.
All right, I should, because what happened was I'd like jump off from a high point and just watching the number to the objective go was like, because like you can't like swoop and then like go faster. Like there's nothing to do in the air to manipulate it. Actually, that's one thing I really wish this game had more of, was like, I wish there was a little more dynamism in the flying, where like, hey, can I swoop down, come back up and gain speed?
It feels like there should be in this game, because
I tried a couple of times to be like, oh, maybe I can
dive bomb,
I can draft,
and then
and you can dive bomb but it's literally just there for like, oh shit, you're almost out of stamina. Do you want to dive to the ground so you don't take like eat shit as you fall to the grass? But I often found myself, because it was so slow to go forward flying, I was like, well, I'll just jump off because it looks cool, and the game is like
and you have
really pretty. The world itself is gorgeous.
Or something where you'll just hop on a mount and roll.
And the mounts are extremely fast.
Yes, exactly.
Let me please though mount the bear. Like, I don't know why I have to stealth attack the bear.
Yeah.
So in this game you come across, like wild stallions, horses, and if you sneak up around them, there's like a little exclamation meter that goes off that's like, the horses have noticed you, and all you have to do is like wait like a half a beat, and then you can just go up to them, hit triangle, and it's like, you tamed them. It's, did I? Okay, all right. And then they become a permanent mount where you just have to hold triangle to summon them, like wherever you are. Like, you have a lot of powers. That one's not particularly explained, of like why you could just like own animals and summon them at will and begin riding them as you're going from one place to the next. But it's fucking cool. And I got a horse, and I was like, oh, maybe this is just a game where you can get all sorts of weird animals out in this space. And I see this bear, and I'm gonna sneak up to this bear. I got really close, and then I was waiting for the exclamation mark to come out where I was gonna have to be quiet and hide in this bush. And instead the game was just like, would you like to hit triangle to murder the shit out of this bear? And I was like, aw. And then I looked on my in the menu that's like, there are daily and weekly quests that you can get in this game from a big board in the center of town.
It's like Destiny 1 style bounties. It's just like
and they're like countdowns on it. There's like ones that are permanent. They're just like, whenever you log in, you can just slowly tick away at them. It's go find 5 chests, go find 6 of a certain upgrade, and one of them is just kill animals. Just kill them. Like, these bears aren't doing shit to anybody. No. And this game also has the has a day-night cycle, and has like the red moon equivalent in Breath of the Wild, where things get like a little wilder out there. And this one is just, you'll just be walking around, it gets dark, and the bears become murderous and red for some reason. But at least then I felt better about going and like ticking the number up. It was like, all right, well, this bear has got fire on its ass, and now it's really trying to kill me. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this 10 animal kill number up to 10. And it's like the first quest you can get. It's like, hey, you want to kill 10 animals? Like, not really.
Is that why should I do that? Or
give me
I guess.
Oh, are they cursed? Are they possessed?
No.
Like, no, they're just bears.
Not kill 10 enemies, of which there are plenty. Not kill 10 demon bears. There are demonic bears.
And there are. When the red moon comes out, that's a demon bear. And like, I get it. I'll do that occasionally when I'm exploring and I see a demon bear. I will save this land from these demon bears. And there are like, go kill 20 ghost soldiers or whatever those things are called. Like, I get that. Yeah. But why is the first thing in this game, the first quest you grab is go slaughter 10 animals, and the whole framing of the game is the gods are pricks.
Yeah.
And like,
that's why.
You should.
That's why.
But it's not really, I guess.
The gods
but you're
like,
good.
Fuck it. Go kill 10 animals for us. We'll give you 20 gems or whatever the reward is for those quests. I don't even know what the reward is for those quests. I don't even know.
Yeah. It's one of like 30 gems that you can't keep track of, and then just occasionally the game would be like, you can go upgrade something. It's like, oh, okay,
I'll
go back
do
to
that. Let me upgrade the sword or this bow. Actually, it's like, you can go upgrade that. Like, I don't use the bow enough. I'm going to save these for the sword or the hammer.
The bow does so little damage.
I guess if we upgraded it, it would be better, but...
Well, and they try and they almost like understand that, like, the game almost communicates like, well, you're probably not going to want to upgrade this bow, but the like the upgrade gem for the bow, and what's the other one? There's like a yellow one that's specific to the bow.
Oh, you're right. It's the bow and is it like how many potions you can carry, I want to say?
Yeah, how much you can carry. And like you can only use this upgrade gem on those. So even though you're like, I'd much rather upgrade my axe, the game's like, no. You should think about upgrading the bow. And like you upgrade
that's a smart design thing.
It is. And like but you upgrade the potion stack once and then be like, I really don't need like more than 8 health potions, at least like, with the level of the enemies at the moment. It's
I don't want to think about playing this game where I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I had 16 potions. That's a different game at that. That's Bloodborne. I'm describing Bloodborne. The point I'm like, I needed 16 potions for this fight.
Well, it's just like weird the way like the game communicates. Like what happens like whenever you get to like a lookout point and it's like hold R3 and like, go into, you have a telescope vision and you can mark things on the map, which is just, I didn't find that process particularly fun. Where like you're scanning around and then the controller vibrates a little bit and then like the reticle like starts kind of like flashing the closer you are to something where you can then hit R2 and it reveals it on the map. And you can stumble across things, and the game's architecture and geometry is built that you can often tell, oh, this looks like a spot where a chest might be, or oh, this looks like where some combat might be. And so you don't have to engage with that, but the game very much is like, just like, you want to know where you want to know where an epic chest is. And I say that because it marks it as an epic chest, which usually just communicates that there's going to be a fight and a puzzle. And then some of them are just a fight and others are just a puzzle. But an epic chest, hey, buddy.
You got to open that epic
both
chest.
Of those.
I also just want to say briefly that I think it's one of those things where, or a part of the thing that I think is interesting here is, I think that this is a game that can very clearly illustrate the ways in which the past year that Ubisoft has had could go away in the public consensus or public discourse instantly. Because unlike Watch Dogs, which is dealing with issues of, the abuse of by the powerful, blah, blah, blah. And unlike Valhalla, which was directly connected to one of the big oustings after it came to light what his misdeeds were, this is a game that does not have that sort of direct connection to the scandals and the questions of power in the same way. It's so cartoonish and bright that it's easy to be like, who made this? No one made this. I don't have to worry about what the conditions were that this was made. And so we should pause for a second and remind folks that like stuff at Ubisoft has been rough for the last question mark for a long time.
Probably for a decade.
Yeah, and it's only and maybe longer than that. Who the fuck knows? But it's come to light in the last year the degree to which the company has been rife with issues of sexual harassment, racial discrimination, and if not outright hate speech, then the sort of stuff that makes people deeply uncomfortable. Sexual misconduct, more broadly, misogyny and homophobia and everything else, but by their own internal metrics, and post crisis. Internal conversations, which are always even then underreported in some ways. And so, it's one of those things where like, man, it's so easy to imagine a year from now, no one brings this shit up. And it's not clear if Ubisoft has fixed its messes yet, right? I know there are people there for a fact who are working on trying to make that place a better place to work.
Well, also, how do you measure that, right? Like totally. the way a Titanic-sized ship pivots is one measured not over days, weeks, months, but years. And so it's very easy to fall into the trap of, well, okay, when the next Ubisoft game comes out in the spring, well, like how are we supposed to measure whether things are materially better? There hasn't been a Kotaku article that, that tells me how to feel. And so I guess I'll just keep on keeping. There's not a status. Right. There's not Guillemot doesn't come out in the front of each new game and be like, here's how we've addressed things going forward. Yeah. And so
also I want to update. They did finally stitch Eves into that one summer event pre Watch Dogs and stuff.
Wow.
Oh, like the YouTube video, the archive. He's at the front.
He's not at the very front. He's like stitched into the middle somewhere, which is
okay.
like before the countdown ends, which is where I went to check the last time I went to check, and he was not there. And now they've put him in where he should have been to begin with. That's out points in their favor, but someone is paying attention and is like, yeah, we need to go back and make sure that works, make sure that that's where that's supposed to be. So credit to whoever did that. I don't know how many people are going to see it at this point, but I'd rather it be there than not.
Well, and it's also the case that in the world that we're in of COVID, where, you know, I'm not like particularly upset of not going to like events like E3, but those are moments where executives are forced to do interviews by the nature of the circus. And COVID has created in an industry where there is already a distinct lack of access because there is no culture or regulations in enshrining it. You are sort of left to the whims of norms. And like when you have an E3, occasionally you will get an outlet that has an interview with an executive. Like, you know, you get to talk to Reggie, or, you know, someone else gets to talk to you know, heads of Ubisoft. And that's just not happening right now, because there's no expectation that like he needs to go out and answer to anybody. And so that's all. It's like, it's hard to measure what we should be measuring, how to measure it, how to feel about that as like an industry observer, a critic, a reporter, a consumer. And then even just the perfunctory stuff where it's like, look, man, even if you can't give us good answers, we just want to like hold your feet to the fire and make you feel like shit for a little while. Like even that stuff, which does, like, it may not change things, but it can make you feel good to just like make someone rich and powerful like feel uncomfortable for a little while. That even that stuff doesn't exists. Like the only times he comes out to talk is a performative video that it may or may not is attached to the thing is actually people are actually walking, or an investor call in which that stuff's just not going to be meaningfully brought up, or at least not to the degree that is going to be, I think, satisfactory to folks like ourselves trying to hold them accountable for it.
Yeah, totally. Before we go to break, I just want to hit one more. Go ahead, Cado.
I just I had a thought about this game, especially in relation to Genshin. Just kind of hearing y'all talk about it. It feels like it's interesting to see two games that take notes from Breath of the Wild, but it feels like they've kind of tackled the way they've taken their influence into different ways. Like where Genshin felt like they were interested in the kind of systemic interactions in that game and then like blew that out into their whole combat system. This feels like it's taking kind of more the structural things of like movement through the stuff. And like, it's interesting to see how that has played out in like, what was really interesting about Breath of the Wild was kind of obviously all of these things meshing really well, but like how certain things that you pick out won't stand on their own kind of.
Right. And I'm curious to see how this ends up shaking out. Like, I do think there could be a big audience for this. I do think that there could be a lot of people who like we were talking about before don't like the friction of Breath of the Wild or want more to invest in, you know, in terms of having progression systems and stuff.
Yeah, just more structures. Like,
totally.
Give me,
and they might end up really liking this. I don't know if the writing will mesh with them. It might. But I do think that like there's an interesting thing here is like, you know, Assassin's Creed Valhalla was very well received. A thing I didn't see much of in the reviews or conversation around that game were like, I wish this was more like Breath of the Wild.
Sure.
And so I don't, do you know what I mean? Like, I feels like they found a formula that has a big audience. I don't know if this is going to give them a different audience. I don't know how big that audience is. Or if that audience's needs have already been met in some ways this year. So I don't know. We'll see.
If it hews too close to the way that Breath of the Wild did, but then like only reminds you of Breath of the Wild instead of enjoying the thing itself, you know?
Yeah, totally.
One small aside, I was part of this Apple event earlier this week where I spoke to a bunch of developers who are getting some awards, and the through line I had was asking different developers about like, what is it like to make a hit game during COVID? How did that change various aspects of your development? And there are a lot of interesting surprises. I'll have a story probably next week about that. But I actually had a chance to talk with some of the folks in charge of Genshin Impact, more on like the comms and marketing side as opposed to the development. But I asked them, I was like, oh, you know, what was it like to make, you know, that a game that was just like a big hit, but, you know, you're doing, you know, some of the hardest parts of game development is like the end sprint where you are doing the bug fixing and the polishing and a lot of the QA stuff that is invisible to a lot of players unless they encounter it, but it's like really, really difficult stuff that happens like right towards the end. And to do that remotely has been one of the big challenges of COVID. And like I talked to all sorts of different developers that gave me lots of interesting anecdotes about like how fucking challenging it was to do that in 2020. And then I asked them, they're like, well, we locked down for like a couple of weeks and then it was just gone and we just went back to work and like everyone's pretty healthy and good and like things are just back to normal here. And that's, you know, it was like they were almost like taken aback by the notion of like what was they said their challenge was like, I don't know, the game got delayed internally by a couple of weeks, but otherwise they just like went back to normal. It's like, oh, I mean, yeah, problems with China, but also like they're not alone in having like functionally responded to something like this. And it's like, oh, you just like went back to like your normal life a couple of weeks later, right? I hold out my hope of like maybe my mom gets the vaccine because she's old and that means my kids could go back to daycare like in February. I don't know.
God. Ugh. What a nightmare. What a nightmare world we're in. The thing I wanted to quickly say before break, or the quick game I want to hit, because I don't have a ton of thoughts on them, and they're not particularly positive, and I don't want to really. There's no reason to linger on it because it's not like a big game that anyone really cares too much about. Is Chronos? God, what is the full name of this game? Chronos.
Oh, I've gotten lots of emails about this game.
Before the Ashes by Gunfire Games, which I think if you just saw it on Steam or Epic or whatever, you'd be like, oh, this is another game by the Remnant from the Ashes people. It looks like it's a prequel. It looks like they're doing like a Dark Souls-y thing, more so even than Remnant, because it's like it's not a shooter, it's a third-person action-adventure game. And you know, third-person action RPG. Cool, maybe they'll make a really good one of those. And like, there's two answers to this. One is like, no, it's kind of like workman-like at best, and some of the art design is really good, but the story is nothing, and the combat is like mediocre at best. And the second answer is this is a port of a VR game. This is Chronos, their VR game from 4 or 5 years ago now, but with some updates and changes. Some switches in the level, not the level design, but the way you progress from space to space. An actual third-person camera instead of the kind of, they had like a fixed cam setup in the original version of this, sort of like a Resident Evil thing. And it's just like, I'm glad it's out there for the Remnant super fans who wanted to see, like, it's in the same world as Remnant. It is a prequel to Remnant, and so I think there is like value in that if that's a thing that you are a like dyed in the wool super fan. But you know, I'm pretty high on that game, and I'm not even gonna come back to this because I don't think that it doesn't have it. It like doesn't. There's too many enemies I can kill by just hitting R2 over and over again because they get caught in a stun lock animation and backed against the wall, and they can't get out of that. And that is just like, you can't allow me to do that in a game that's supposed to make me think of the way the Souls combat works. So go back and listen to the last 3 weeks of the way we've been talking about Demon Souls, and it's just like you really need to harness some really smart design around the way enemies work and stuff. There's like a couple of tiny fun or interesting twists. Every time you die in this game, you age up by a year. And at every decade, you start at like 18. And when you hit 20 and then 30, 40, 50, etc., you get a perk that you can choose from a set of 3 every decade. And I think the way that it was presented was eventually.
Is there a cap on that?
I don't know. I don't know. But I haven't. I'm only in my mid-20s still, so I have no idea. I've gotten to the second boss at this point. I
beat Chronos before your actual real life age challenge.
Oh, that's good. That's fun. It's doable. It's doable for sure. There aren't a lot of weapons. The thing that happens when you get older is eventually you stop being able to put points when you level up into strength or agility, and then which are your damage stats, and then it starts to I believe it starts to take them away, but puts points into arcane, which is your magic stat as you get older and wiser. I don't know. Listen, I think it's like the fiction is like you spend that year training, like you die, and then in the fiction before you teleport back, you're like in that year powers you up somehow. I don't think it's like you go home to train, but like I don't know if you're in a hyperbolic time chamber style thing. Like, I don't know. I don't remember what the lore master said at the very start of the game because it was hours ago. But did seem to suggest, hey, by the way, when you're an adventurer, this is a thing that happens. And I don't know. It's fine. It's again. I think the character design, like the enemy design stuff, is neat. I think the level design is not great, but there are some clever little bits. I hit a thing. You could tell it's a VR game because there are moments when it's very clear you're supposed to like look around for clues and like find, for instance. There's like a mirror that you can walk into that's like a teleporter in this game, and early on, or like not early on, but in front of it, there is there are a bunch of like puzzle blocks that you kind of rotate to have different letters on them, different letters in this language you don't know, and it's almost like dialing a Stargate code to tell you where the mirror is going to teleport you to, and that can teleport you to some interesting places in a way that like is not just I'm teleporting from. It's not just shortcuts around the level. I'll spoil one little bit of it, which is that like you find an adjoining mirror inside of a cabinet in a library. And it's like a little one. And so when you go in and you dial that in and then you walk through the mirror, it puts you through the little mirror and you're a little person. You're just a little like action figure sized person now fighting like wind up toy soldiers inside of this bookcase surrounded by these big books and stuff. And like, that's like a really neat moment. That's like a really good level design moment that comes from this being a VR game and them wanting to play with scale and stuff like that. And so like, it was interesting to see how that stuff like turned out to create some of the best moments of this thing. But it's just not there otherwise. And it's like $26 or it might be $30 when it's not on sale. And that's too much money for what this is. I think that if it was like $10, maybe, but for $30, like there are so many other things that have taken inspiration from Souls that do a little bit more. Whether that's the Neo series, who like really pushes the combat a lot, and you can like if you haven't played that, go play that. Or like I revisited Ashen this week, and I still really like Ashen, and think that game like is not as good as any of the FromSoft games, but is really heartfelt and really has like this other sense of community. Yeah, absolutely, totally. And like compared to this, I think it's just like a few steps ahead. So there's stuff out there in the genre if that's what you want, but you don't necessarily need to spend $30 for this to get it. So that's my quick take on Chronos before the ashes. I don't know. Also, there's some ashes already. The ashes are already there. Like it's already like the world has been destroyed and you're in the ashes. So I don't know.
What
were you gonna say?
Plant people.
I would say that this seems to be a bit of an origin story of how the plant stuff gets places.
Started.
The root. Okay. Yeah. Or maybe not how it started, but you definitely kind of get turned into an agent of that stuff pretty early on in a way that's like interesting if you like the Remnant story and like want to know about the root and how it moves through dimensions and blah, blah, blah. But yeah. Anyway, we should take a break. We can come back and talk about some more stuff, maybe answer some emails. BRB. All right, we are back. Who wants to bring something to the floor? Patrick, we still haven't talked about Umurangi. Umurangi Generation.
Is that how you say it?
Curious.
Umurangi? I had to say it out loud.
We had an email about it months ago.
Umurangi.
Yeah, I believe that's right. I'm just gonna double check.
If I'm a shitty white person, it's Umurangi Generation. I feel like that's.
Please don't be a shitty white person. Yeah. Anyway, I now cannot find this email, but yes, we had someone write in and correct us on it, and I believe I believe it's Umurangi, but I could be fucking it up still because I don't have the email in front of me. Anyway,
either way, I'm in full game of the year. Like part of the reason I didn't finish Demon Souls, I was like, I've done all the worlds except finish up, shit, who's the one before King Allant? The is a P word, right? Who's that?
Oh, the Penetrator.
Penetrator. Like, yeah, I was like, I've basically beat that game. Like, I'll go do it. I'll go finish it off eventually. But it's like, I suddenly realized, like, oh shit, like October 14th is when we're recording, or the 10th or whatever, when we're recording our podcast. I was like, I need to try and like get my shit in order with the games I'm playing. And I have a list of shorter games I wanted to get through. So, one of them was this because it came out when I was on paternity leave, and I played a couple of games. Like I beat Final Fantasy VII, the remake, and I played through Gears Tactics as a brain mush game when I needed some distraction during all that. But this one fell by the wayside, and the way that the two of you have talked about it was like, all right, I need to at least like spend some. It's like a lot of this period is me playing like an hour of a game to see, all right, do I need to play the rest of this, or is this like just not resonating with me and I can just move on to the next one? And like, I'm trying to find the equivalent of A Quiet Hike from last year, which like I didn't know of, hadn't played. And then all of a sudden it was like one of my favorite games of the year, like in this like glorious, like 3-hour window from a year ago. And I will say this. So I don't know shit about cameras or, or shooting photos. The advent of computational photography on our modern phone camera devices, where hey, like shit you gotta think about to make like the picture of like you and your wife at a sunset or your kids look cool. We got it. Just like maybe click on the screen to tell us like where the action's at, and we'll take care of the rest. And then you get thrown into this game where it's like, hey, you know what part of the fun is? Like all the doodads on that camera. And it has like a poor, it doesn't really have, I mean, it has a section that says tutorial.
Yeah, but that's not what it's doing. Yeah.
It's not what it's doing. It's giving you some sort of like generalized concepts of photography, but not stuff that's all that materially important for like navigating the tool set in the game. And so that part I immediately brushed up against it. 'Cause like, oh, like if this is, like, I don't play with photo modes in video games, period. Like, the first time I've used a photo mode in the last couple of years was, like, to take one screenshot of myself in Demon's Souls when I got the meat cleaver. And I just, it just doesn't do it. I really like looking at other people's screenshots, but I just don't spend time engaging with that in video games. And so, and I've never had much of an interest in, like, actual photography in real life either. So then to get thrown into this where it's like, oh shit, like this is a lot of things I don't really engage with in video games. And this is the central conceit, where I'm like sitting and spending 10 minutes, like trying to line up the shot of 7 birds. And I was like, I don't even know, like, does this count as all 7 birds in the shot? Like, do they need to be in focus? Does this mean 7 birds in one shot, or I'm taking like 7 pictures of different birds and that adds up? There's just a lot of like the game that is, like, probably purposely rough around the edges. Also, you know, reading interviews with the developer, like this was their first like actual, you know, they made games before, but this is like their first like big sort of like picture a game to have made. And so none of that is surprising in that context. And then also like quickly the game is, I don't know, like run around and to find these things. And like when I'm looking for like the one thing that I can't find and there's like no hints on how to find it. I was like, all of a sudden I was realizing like, I don't know that I dislike this game, but I'm starting to wonder if it's not for me. And rather than banging my head against a game that I don't like. Yeah. Well, so then I was like, okay, deep breath. I was like, what do I like about this game? Cause I was trying to like, are the parts I'm chafing up against, can I find the things I do like? If nothing else, then have a better understanding of what, because often, the little bits I picked up on, like why the two of you liked the game, I'm sure the photography and stuff was part of it, but like a lot of it was the storytelling. And I was like, okay, like where none of that has anything to do, or maybe like, can I find that amidst the things that aren't really doing anything for me? And so what I ended up doing was I stopped worrying about really taking interesting photos. Like I would sometimes like just put on a wide angle lens and like just take a picture of like a big space and it'd be like, boom, 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 you nailed 3 of the goals. And I'm like, thank you. Like, I appreciate that. Because what I ended up finding compelling about the game was the storytelling in the world and the environmental, and just piecing together like what is going on. I don't know if you guys ended up like revealing the conceit of the game, and I don't want to spoil it here.
Yeah,
if that hasn't
even
happened.
Now it's hard to want to reveal the conceit because it's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and I don't want to spoil it either. But
Yeah.
the moment in like the second world or whatever, like when
Yeah.
you get a better sense of why things are tragic and weird here, then the game had me.
Sure. Yeah.
Like that, I if I'd come to this podcast and just said like the first part of this, where it's like I just chafed up against like the environmental, like the level design and the photography stuff, and I just don't think it's for me. And then if I could very much have seen Austin be like, okay, but like,
please
you
just go through level 3 or 4.
Just go a little bit further and just see what the actually is like like the events of this world.
Yeah.
And then
And also
make your
listen to like
decision
a little
from
bit more music because the music continues to get good all the way through.
Oh, strong like Genesis Mega Drive vibes. To a degree that I don't know that it like particularly fit the atmosphere like a good part of the time. Like during like large sequences where
Love it.
Tragic things are happening to the people around me, and it's like and I feel like I'm playing Contra. I mean,
Someone is. It's just you're not. You're not, you know?
Well, true. Yes. And then I found all those like disparate parts. The parts stuff that I kind of like rubbed up against. I almost found charming, even if they weren't for me. And actually, like the smaller areas, like there's one of the levels is in like a train car, and there's just nowhere to go. You are just caught in between 3 small areas, and I found that like the pixel hunt of that of like, what is this game? And once I realized, oh, not everything the game wants me to take a picture of is literal necessarily, or there's a little bit of trickery or wordplay in terms of what they want me to capture. And once I realized that was happening, because it's not really communicated early on, and that's where my frustration was building, was just like, the fuck do you want me to do? Like, I don't know. Are you being funny? Like, is this a bit or is this being literal? And over time, I was able to sort of unpack what the game's tone and style was. And I came to I will wonder in the Switch version of this that is, coming out at some point, like, will some of that stuff be massaged, or will that be?
I bet not. I bet it's just raw. I bet it's the same
I hope it's raw, because I think there is I found satisfaction in discovering what I enjoyed about the game, and still finding joy in that, even though I know a lot of people like love the game for the photography stuff. Like, I still found a lot of worth in the other parts of it, and specifically in the storytelling. And I found that to be really like both delightful and like horrifying.
Yeah.
And
it goes places. It's shocking in some of like the turns that game takes are like haymakers. Yeah. You just load into like, all right, what am I going to get in this next level? Let's see what I see here.
There is no set like the like this exact sort of like setup and execution, put it being more polished. Like it's very easy to imagine it then undercutting what it accomplishes on its own by being raw and weird and not holding your hand. That it's hard to tell, is it doing that on purpose, or it's because it was largely made by one person and they didn't have the time to do more? Like the fact
but
that
also that is in a way, like, in a medium is the message sort of way, like this is a game that someone in the world of this game would make to this quality. The photography you do here with the camera you have, where you're like, making a couple bucks on it, is like an art object in the same way the game is, where there's an amateur edge to it. It's being made in conditions that are terrifying and apocalyptic. This is a game that was explicitly meant as a response to the wildfires that the creator, was living through. And which have continued around the world, through this year, that I think to some of us in the US are only seeing, Umurangi means red sky. The name of the game is Red Sky Generation, and named such because of the color that the sky took during the wildfires. And we have now finally seen what that red sky looks like. Whereas previously, when this game came out, it hadn't happened in the US. Again, I said this on Twitter the other day, but like it feels like such a game of this moment in the ways in which it is quietly interrogating what power does in moments like this,
or doesn't do,
or fails to do. Yeah,
fails
exactly.
to do.
Totally. What it prioritizes.
It is hard not to play this game and it speaks to the COVID moment, even if it was never intended, because there are all sorts of governments fuck up all the time. Like we are exposed to it on such a wide scale in the United States because of the monumental failure of the American government in this particular moment. But that happens all the time, all over the world, to all sorts of crises, and
often also because of the American government just done to other people instead.
Well, it's, like this game, has like people are wearing masks for specific reasons, and anyway, I just I think it's a really special game, and I part of the reason I wanted to mention my own like arc of like finding my way through it was if you find yourself in a similar position, even if you were to look up a walkthrough that's just like, I'm tired of trying to find this little thing that it wants to be, because there were instances where I found the thing and I was just not taking it at the right angle, and that wasn't fun. But at least like sometimes I'd look up a video and be like, oh, I have the right idea, I'm just like not quite hitting it. I think there is enough here, and actually it gave me strong like 30 Flights of Loving vibes. Sure. Like essentially levels are jump cuts. Yeah. And again, it's like so hard. I've actually been speaking to the developer, and I'm going to chat with them for a story once I do the DLC. I emailed them. I was like, hey, do you want to chat? They're like, did you finish the DLC? I was like, no. They're like, well, email me after you finish the DLC. Yeah. And I was like, okay. I'm going to get to that. I wanted to give myself a break.
The DLC even has like an interesting take on the jump cut thing in a sense. Just to reiterate what Cado said on a previous thing, not to give more away, but the levels, things change in the levels, or you move into new spaces in the levels, and it plays with that in a way that's sort of could be compared to a jump cut in terms of feeling like you've entered a different emotional or atmospheric space.
Yeah, it's just the same way you're getting that between levels in the like first batch of levels, and this like each level kind of has its own contained version of that, which is really neat.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So really good. I'm hoping it will find I'm glad it's coming to Switch. Like I'm both curious to see how the mechanics adapt to that, like the interface adapts to that, but also I hope it finds an audience there. I mean, certainly people have played it, but it's nice when the Switch is like the great spot for like accidental exposure to interesting shit. It's like the best place for that. So I'm excited for that to land there. So people, you don't have PC, you probably don't need a very good one to play it. But keep an eye on it when it comes to Switch at least.
Definitely. Anything else anyone wanna shout out or talk about? Cado, are you still on that Demon Souls grind? I know you played some Miles.
Slowly. Yeah, I did finish Miles. That's mostly what I wanted to do because I realized I was getting near the end of that. That game feels fucking great, and I have problems with the story, which is kind of like, I mean, I feel like in general, it's just like, the subject matter feels, I guess unconsidered might be the wrong word, but like, it feels like out of step with our reality this year, which is like an issue that AAA games have, where they start processing these things years ahead of time, and then it happens that this just hews so closely to certain real world events that it feels off. The whole like conceit with the underground being an enemy in here really feels off to me, where they hew so closely to the idea of protest and or like just rebellion against a corporation.
Right, but too much being the classic villain trope. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I am kind of not even glad. Like it's the ending also kind of sucks in that way. Like I'm not gonna say any spoilers, but just like the way it ends up, like it does the right thing at too late almost. So it was there is a beautiful kind of like amazing spectacle that was really fun to like be in, but every single time like a new story beat came up, I was like, I really hope they get out of this framing faster. Like I see them heading out of this framing a little bit, but it ends up not getting there until the last 2 seconds of the game. Basically, it's like I feel like if this had been like a full size, like as big as the original game, right? They maybe could have done that full storyline in a way where it seems like more like, okay, this is about Miles working through understanding those kind of dynamics.
I was talking to some friends about this, to Em and Jackson over at Normal Mapping. We were talking about the end of this game, and I was explaining the stuff that you're talking about in terms of like, who are you fighting at the end of this game? Who is the villain at the end of this game?
Right.
Do you fight that person? Yes or no? And without getting into like specifics around it, the thing that I want to say Em said was like, you can tell that this feels like a team of writers coming in, maybe not coming in later, but being like, well, the boss fight's already done. This is the boss fight. The boss fight is this. We're not going to build another boss fight at this point. How do we try to salvage this boss fight by changing what the story is around it so that the characters have clear motivations, that you can understand where they arrived at those motivations without it being the thing where this person is simply the villain because they're too much Antifa. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Given the fact that this started as a PS4 expansion and became a PS5 launch title, like, I can't speak to like your specific hypothetical.
Totally.
That said, that hypothetical is something that you ask any game design or any game writer that has been
100%
brought onto a project or been part of a project. Like that is writers are often not structuring the story. They are then to give structure to a game that is constantly in flux. So it wouldn't shock me if there were instances of that, or if that was endemic of Miles in general.
Cado,
because,
I think, I think Cado's totally right that in the full version of this game, which could have been a worse game in other ways because it would have felt so much more bloated.
Yeah, in the full version,
act.
Truly, the full version is let's cut out the middle third and get to that end part faster so that we can move past it and get to what would be a natural like villain for the But
yeah,
I just like it. It was so frustrating because goddamn, that last fight was cool as shit. Like
it's one of the coolest boss fights in terms of feel.
Visually and mechanically, just like feeling like the most bombastic parts of the movies of like those big comic book fights. Just like the color and the spectacle of it was like. I was like totally bought in, but then every time I like remembered who I was fighting, I'm like, well, shit, I don't like this anymore. I don't want to. I wish this was different. But yeah, it definitely, it felt like they ended up needing to write in kind of personal stakes that had to try to circumvent the kind of like macro level, ideologies that were like not being considered very well, I think. Right.
Yeah.
They focused down on making the story between Miles and this. It's hard to talk about it without spoilers, but Miles and the villain you fight at the end, like be more of the focal point, and it's just kind of like I wish I could be different.
Yeah, me too. We'll talk more openly about it towards the end of the year for sure. With some end of the year content stuff,
a short spoiler section of some at some point. Yeah.
Definitely, right? I feel like that'll come up. I feel like we'll have a reason to talk about it for sure. Anything else? Anyone else want to shout out something they've been playing or checked in on? Or
I played like 90 minutes of the new Don't Nod game, Twin Mirror, which I believe is an Epic exclusive, but is also on Xbox and PlayStation. This was a game that was announced a number of years back in partnership with Bandai Namco and was going to be episodic and then kind of disappeared for a long time. And then earlier this year was announced to be no longer episodic and no longer published by Bandai Namco, and I think is self-published by Don't Nod. I've been hugely interested and fans of a lot of the work they've done. Still think I'll take every instance to say that people should check out more of Life is Strange 2, even though that game got pretty overlooked. And even tell me why a game that I didn't think was particularly great, but was fine in a way that was, as I mentioned at the time, like perfect for Game Pass, just like in a totally fine story that was worth spending a couple hours on. So I pretty much like if they put out something new, I want to see what they're up to. But one thing that I've been worried about with them going forward is like, are all their games just going to be like, this is the one about being like a person of color. Like, oh, this is the one about being trans. Like, is each of the games just going to be like a checklist of like, I don't like different marginalized folks, and we're going to tell a story, which like on some level isn't like, like I could see where that would
how
work.
you get there. Yeah.
How you get there, especially given the response to Life is Strange originally. So Twin Mirror is a game about a person coming home several years after they were a newspaper reporter. They lived in a mining town, like a predominantly kind of like company town, mining town, and they wrote a story about how the regulations at the mine were abhorrent and were getting people hurt. And as a result of their story, it ended up like shutting down the mine and ruining the working lives of a lot of people who relied on the jobs there. And they basically left after the story was published, and their best friend, who was also another reporter, it dies a couple of years later, and that brings them back to the town. And they didn't just leave under circumstances that was, oh, I wrote a piece that was meant to help people and ended up hurting people in the process, but they like just got up and left, like destroyed relationships in the process by just leaving and like moving and like just completely departing, as though nothing had happened. And so you come back, and it's sort of like a game about like, I don't know, like you come back, and it just doesn't. This game doesn't really set up this character very well. The conceit, because this game is going to have one, is, it's still predominantly a game where you are exploring around, talking to people, making decisions. This one, it is not explained so far what is going on, but there is, when you are talking to people, occasionally there will be another person who appears that you can talk to that other people can't. I don't know if this is a case of multiple personalities. These games often have supernatural elements, so it's like often hard to tell like where this begins and where the other parts end. I don't know exactly what the game is playing with here. It hasn't revealed. It's maybe not great that like it's a reveal, but like they haven't fully explained how this character works and what this relationship is to this other person who appears and you can speak to, and ends up sort of like bouncing, thoughts off of. The like main mechanic of the game is you have a mind palace that you go to like experience memories. And because you're a reporter, there are sequences where it's like, oh, you come into a room and you're trying to pick up the clues, and then you are trying to figure out what happened in this area before you got there. And then the way the game handles choices is like you're proposing a hypothesis and then deciding on that hypothesis. So for example, an early one is you go into a bar scene and you're trying to figure out how a fight occurred. And you have 3 different options you can choose for how do you think it happened. And the game doesn't tell you were right or wrong. You just choose to sort of like engage that hypothesis.
Do you feel like you had the evidence to back up that claim?
I picked the one, like it did feel like there were ones that felt more likely than the others. But it's, I think part of what's I find difficult with the game is I don't know so when you play games with choices, there's a tension between, are you playing a character that you want to see, or are you playing a version of the character that the game is like pushing you towards, right? So is it, are you completely are you role playing what you would do in this situation, or are you role playing what the character would do in that situation?
Yeah.
And that is often the fun tension of these games with choices is you kind of like straddling the lines between those, especially in Don't Nod games where you are playing authored characters. Like you aren't playing Shepard in Mass Effect where you are choosing everything this character is, and thus the morality choices are then a direct result of like the character you want to play. Like you come into Twin Mirror and this guy, nobody likes him, and there seems to be like good reason for like even people who seem like nice, good people in this town don't like you. And so there are like early choices where like a character comes up to you and they want to give you a hug, and the option is hug them or like move away. And it's like, well, I don't really like what am I doing here? Like, this is like so early in the game. Am I playing this character where like I don't know anything about them? They seem like they've made bad choices. So why would I make a choice that's like them being a better like better person and improving how they interact with others? Because the game's giving me no sense of Is that the kind of character am I playing? Are those the larger morality choices at play? Is like, is this character who's been walled off and unempathetic is going to learn to do those things? So like the first choice I made was like, all right, I'll hug. And then I was like, nobody likes this dude. And I don't think he's earned, like, I think you should just continue being an asshole because there's nothing to suggest to me that like you would act any differently when you come into these situations. And yet the choices in front of me are constantly like, be a better person, like be empathetic, or like be standoffish and be a jerk. And it just makes for like really weird decision making because I just don't know how I'm supposed to like engage with this character because they haven't given me anything to grasp onto. And so I don't have a reason to like not pick the shitty option because it makes me feel bad because that's not what I would do, but it does feel like in line with the character and nothing about the character has shown any evidence that I should act otherwise. It's strange. Like I guess it doesn't shock me that like Namco Bandai was like, I don't know, do you want to go publish this game on your own and maybe not do 3 episodes and just like release it all at once in December?
Yeah, just drop it in December.
It feels like a pretty weak link in the don't nod.
Yeah, I haven't seen anyone really pushing for it this week as like, hey, make sure you check this out. Don't let this slip through the cracks. I've mostly seen people being like, yeah, it's kind of phoned in. It doesn't ever really build up to anything big. And that's a bummer to hear because, you know, I don't know. That's a team I root for, even if I've had my own issues with their games.
I have
over the
issues with
years.
like all of their games, but it always strikes me as games that are generally executing or trying to execute in good faith. Whether they accomplish those marks, is certainly debatable, but I enjoy having those debates about their games. It creates even a tell me why. I definitely recommend go and reading Dia's review. I think it like hits the mark on their particular brand of what has become their brand of game, and like kind of the traps it can fall into. And I think tell me why is worth playing to like engage in that conversation and think about it. Whereas like this one, I don't know. Maybe it has something interesting to say about folks that also experience what this character does. Again, I don't know. I don't know if it's a ghost from their path. I tend to believe it is like a multiple personality thing, given the ways that Don't Nod has approached.
The thing there is like you would expect that they would have done the same sort of before. God, what was the last game that they did called?
Tell me why.
Tell me why. Before Tell Me Why, they put out all the stuff around having consultants and trying to tell a story that that dealt with transness but didn't directly linger on issues of abuse, and like they were very careful. But like there's no similar thing for dissociative identity disorder here,
right? Like any sort of like neurological
or pluralism or any of the other. Yeah, whether it's a because there are also people who are plural because they feel that way, but are not diagnosed with any sort of disorder. Right. And there's nothing, as far as I can tell, there's nothing on that I've seen that says that they are doing that or are trying to address, have a character.
Right. And it may very well be the case that it's just like he's haunted by his past and there's like there's a dude following around that he talks to, because that's a well-trodden metaphor in sort of like traumatic storytelling. But you can't help but then, because Don't Not has set themselves up as like, we're the studio that is like going to tell stories about different sorts of like marginalized identities, you can't help but then go into a new game with the framing of like, oh, that must be what this is. And maybe it's not, but especially with Tell Me Why, where they've set up themselves, we're like, oh, we're going to discuss our approach. We're not going to hide this behind a reveal. Right. And this game very much feels like it's hiding it behind a reveal. Like, oh, at some point it's like, this isn't supernatural, or you know what I mean? Like that doesn't feel great. Like I'd rather the game had set, a little, just be upfront about it. Like explain
the way
what
that
is
the
going
website
on
says
with
it
this
is
character.
just like, okay, a former investigative journalist, Sam 33, has an unusually analytical mind. Its unique abilities take the form of a multifaceted mind palace. It's this unique mind that can lead him to dissociate from the social arena where his logical, analytical personality sometimes hurts those around him. However, Sam can count on help from the double, a capital D, a more empathetic and sociable version of himself that only he can see. This ally
is not in the game, any of this.
Really? Okay. This ally is there.
I mean, maybe
it just hasn't been, you haven't gotten to it. Right.
No, but like there's no equivalent sort of like pretextual setup that is like, here's why this dapper man talks to me every once in a while and is like, you're kind of an asshole. And I'm like, I agree. Like it, if it's acting as like a player surrogate, like it acts that way sometimes. But,
this ally is there to guide him and help him blend into a society that sometimes rejects the unorthodox. Through these human qualities, the double is able to offer Sam an alternative when he needs to make important decisions. Unlike Sam's analytical mind, which is not very human at all. That's me editorializing. I was like very much playing into some shit around neurodivergence that I don't know that they have the chops to, discover an extraordinary mind, which obviously is a reference to
like multiple personalities means like you might just not have empathy and you need to invent empathy. Like
it's
that's
also
sort of
playing very hard into like certain autism spectrum type tropes that get
the whole
deployed.
mind palette. It feels like someone watched like the BBC Sherlock and was like, cool, that seems like let's go there.
It almost feels like they were probably started doing and making this game with maybe specifically like people in the autistic spectrum in mind, and then maybe noticed that it was fucked up and we're like, let's just strip it out and leave the rest, and it'll just be magic or something.
Mind double. Maybe it's magic.
Don't worry about it.
Exactly.
It's not.
And who again, like it's who knows? It's like I could play this game further, and then they like talk about his like childhood, like is there a growing up like growing up autistic, and like that's like there's all sorts of things that could happen, but I
feel like if they were going to go that far, though, they've already demonstrated that they like aren't with what they did with Tell Me Why and the whole like preamble. Like it would be wild for them to do the exact opposite, basically, right?
I do think
Different
there was something very,
but
but I also think there was something very specific to having a centralized trans character relative. I do think that like that is particularly sticky and thorny to a degree that I'm not saying this is the right attitude. Like I think it would be like better to be like more like I think that was a decent policy to be more, whether you think they were successful in like their FAQ and stuff like that. Like I do think it was like that was a decent policy to have. But I'm just saying, like, I don't know if like the next like Life is Strange 2 like was about like racism, and there wasn't like a racism FAQ before like Life is Strange 2 came out. So I mean, like I just think like there are different. I think there was something very specific about it being a trans character that made them feel as though they had to like be more forthcoming.
Which
that is not
really
necessarily
unpack
true.
For quite some time about
100%. I think that says a lot in like a lot of different directions. So yeah, it just makes it weird. Like I've now even just having this conversation is like now convincing me they're like I need to see more of this shit because like I just need to know. Like
it's short. I hear it's like 5 or 6 hours. So
yeah, it's but it is one of those like as I'm doing the Game of the Year thing, it's like okay, do I need to finish this for Game of the Year? No. Do I need to finish this
January?
Over a couple of beers in January? Like probably.
Yeah.
So I can come back here and let everyone know how it lands and tell them to. I mean, it's also like,
I'm curious. Yeah.
This is we used to live in a landscape where you would wait for games, like wait for the sale, right? And then I look at Twin Mirror and I'm like, you know what? Wait for the Game Pass. Like this game will come to Game Pass in a couple of months. Like assuredly, it is. I think Tell Me Why is a better game, but this is like very much Don't Nod's trying to get as many sales as they can, like skating off of their past history in December, and then they will go ahead and sell to Microsoft and become part of like the Game Pass lineup in March or something like that, because no one's going to be buying this game a month from now. And so this is very much probably going to be it's just interesting to be in a world where you can go, just wait for Game Pass. Like it'll probably show up there eventually. And that's just like an interesting place to find ourselves in relative to the like wait for sale mentality that we've been in for especially in like in the Steam universe of things.
No, totally. Quickly, a couple things from the gaming bucket. Gaming@device.com. This one comes in from Jake. who says, I have some gaming advice TM to pass along following your ragging on the official PS5 remote a week or two ago. The advice is, you probably don't need a PS5 media remote. If you enable the right setting on your TV, you can probably use your regular old TV remote to navigate the PS5's menus. It can even wake up your PS5. On my old Vizio TV, the setting is called CEC, Consumer Electronics Control.
Yeah.
I think some TVs may use other names like RC, Remote Control Pass-Through. But there you go. The future is now. Thanks for years of free entertainment, Jake. Thank you, Jake.
Yeah, I would control my PS4 with my TV remote.
Damn, I never knew that.
It's fun.
Really. I'm fine using my PS5 remote or my PS4 remote at the time, but still cool.
Also, when I hit,
there's like. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say when I hit the PlayStation button to turn on the PlayStation 5, it turns my TV on if it's not already on, and vice versa. If I turn the TV off while it's like on like a regular menu, it'll put it in rest mode.
Yeah, that's what my Apple TV is all set up, where like it'll turn on the sound bar and everything all at once. That shit's neat.
That shit's neat. Jesse writes in and says, "What is your favorite Lego set?" Were y'all Lego kids? Did you do lots of Legos as kids?
Yeah, I don't remember any specific sets from my childhood though. I have a set that I really enjoyed that I made in college, which is the AT-AT set from around that time.
Oh, sure.
That's really fun.
That's cool. Yeah, that's big.
I don't know where that set went. I had it in like a plastic bag in my parents' house, and now it's like gone into the ether. I've been looking for it for years.
I specifically remember a pirate ship set that I got for a Christmas. Because I was very much into. I liked the big instruction set, and I will like following putting them together as opposed to here's a bunch of Lincoln Logs or a bunch of Legos and like build your own thing. And I remember the pirate ship being like, that was a big deal when I got that. When I remember there was like one of those Christmases where we had like everyone over at our house, which wasn't every year, but so my cousins were helping me put together the pirate ship.
I had a bunch of like the space ones, like not just the Star Wars ones, but like the generic space ones. But unlike Patrick, what I would do is I would build the original thing once, and then I'd be like, you know what? Nah, this is about to become something new. I'm about to figure out some wild spaceship stuff. I was really bad. It's like the most Austin Walker shit in the world, in that like I had really ambitious design ideas, but like didn't care at all about color coordination. Didn't care at all about. It was be like blue, white, black, green. Just like I don't care. Like
gotta build this engine somehow.
Yeah, the shape on this spaceship looks sick that I came up with. And then like would very much have play battles with them. Like I was all the way in on like how do I make my own Star Wars shit out of not having the Star Wars sets themselves. I loved Lego as a kid. Every once in a while I'm like, I should get into Lego. Lego seems like a fun thing to build still.
And there's so many cool license sets
things,
that you can get now. I was really into as a kid Light Bright, like where you had the light up, like I don't know what you'd call them, like what are those little
pegs?
Like little crystals, but like pegs.
Yeah.
And so basically, you can buy it now. They still sell it. We got one for my daughter, and then she was like a little too young to follow it. And now I've been meaning to bring it out because she'd be old enough to do the patterns. But like, yeah, you had like this piece of paper you would put over these patterns, and then you would follow it, and you could make like clowns and trucks and stuff like that. And then you would like, you could then station it up on like your dresser, and you'd have like this cool, lit up drawing that you did. So I did a shitload of Light Brights when I was a kid.
I need to shout out, but I'm going to look after asking this next question. But there's someone on Twitter who I follow whose whole thing is Lego mechs.
Hell yeah.
That are incredible. They look so fucking good. Lou Sim, at Messy Maru, MESSMARU. The thing that's like so cool about if you're into Lego at this point, is that not only are you able to build really dope shit, but you can put together like an order list, basically.
Right.
And so there's like this whole aftermarket thing where this person will sell basically.
What the fuck?
Like this is actually a wild one. This one is this is the Ludens, the Kojima Productions logo mascot, for $35. Basically, this is just the instructions on how to build this. And then what you do is you then also have to go to Bricklink, which to buy the parts to build this thing. And it's like hundreds of dollars all set.
180, 190
for the white one.
White, and then 140, 150 for black.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's
These
cool.
look
That's a good
wild.
It's wild. Yeah, you should look through this person's stuff, Cado, because some of them are just so fucking good. And yeah, I like, and the thing that's so good about this is like, this is a person who has, if you go through and like click on their Mech Wars tag on their website, which again is Messy Maru, M-A-R-U, Messy, M-A-R-U.com, there's like fiction here and organizations and stories. And it's just like, I'm going to sell you my fictional shit. And like, the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to make dope mechs and then sell you how to build them and then link through an affiliate code, I guess, to Bricklink. And some of the designs are just sick as hell.
The Ascendant Lords are comprised mostly of highly influential old Earth aristocrats who were able to quickly establish military authority during the early years of the Chorus Wars.
Please, someone just like make me the game set in this person's fictional mech world.
Reframes is a really good name for a mech.
For a mech. It's like a good
And lowercase, I should be specific, lowercase r, capital F.
R-E. Frames. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Very good.
It's very good. Their designs are all really good. So yeah, shout outs to Messy Works.
Oh my god, the reframe is like a fucking like the Gunpla like skeleton.
Like the RG real grade shit. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good.
It's all really good. And like I'm just always impressed by the people who do this stuff because like these are just Lego parts.
Right.
These are just Lego parts. And they are able to do stuff that's like so far beyond that. Anyway, I should stop looking at this stuff because otherwise I'm going to drop a few stacks. Let's go back to the email and see if there's anything else.
They have the Ikaruga ship, but also that it can transform into its like mech form.
Oh, that's wild.
What?
Oh, shout outs to doing cool shit with Lego.
Yeah.
One of the next questions we have here, which I don't have a good answer for, is what is the best giant robot transformation sequence? That comes in from Patrick. I'm not a big transforming robot like person. I'm too much in my like real robot fandom than the super robot fandom. So it's like I'm just not going to have a great answer off the dome because all my shit is boring.
So the answer is any transformation from Beast Wars.
There you go. Great. Good.
I'll take that. I'll
just watching an animal turn into a robot is fucking great.
Beast Wars has a very special place in my heart. I may have played on an online Beast Wars roleplay server when I was like 13.
Okay.
Hell yes.
I had a really boring character. What's that Beast Wars character who is like is it Silverbolt? The one that's like
the Griffin?
The Griffin.
Yeah.
Knightly. I was like, what if him but cooler. I did not have a good. There was nothing. This was not the height of little Austin's creativity. I was like, what if him? But he also is like that. But maybe he has like laser claws or something. You know what I mean? It was nothing.
Great.
It was
nothing.
That's
good.
Yeah.
That's honestly better than my OC, which was just a cat person, but they had the backstory of Wolverine from X-Men.
That's fine. Oh, this is not just Wolverine. Let Wolverine be a cat boy.
It's just Wolverine. Yeah, Wolverine, but he's a cat boy.
I think we can make that happen.
Instead of claws, it was just his cat claws, but they were still metal, right?
Yeah, yeah, they were still metal. It's Sabretooth. We are now describing Sabretooth.
Fuck.
So that's that. All right, let's do one more here. Second.
I still have that Griffin transformer actually sitting on my home desk.
Here we go. This one comes in from Adrian in Seattle, who says, "Hey Waypoint crew, last week my work decided to give everyone the day off after the election as a self-care day. This email was then followed up by a notice from our building's owner informing us that they were going to cover all exterior doors and windows with plywood out of, quote, an abundance of caution. When I came into work and saw all the plywood, I kept thinking this is ripe for some environmental storytelling, a la Dead Space. Dead Space's cut off their limbs, or Watch Dogs Legion's hilarious bad, all Albion are bastards. If 2020 were a video game and you could scrawl messages on the side of this plywood wall to inform the player about what it was like to live through the year so far, what would you write?
God.
I feel like we got a lot of good. I feel like 1312. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I feel like lots of actual just ACAB shit.
Yeah, just like
lands.
real shit.
But I feel like it doesn't tell the whole story. You know, and this is the thing that Umurangi Generation does extremely well. Lots of good graffiti in that game.
Love it.
God, what would I write? What is the one message about 2020? I got one,
Okay.
but I have to do the outro first, so I'll save it.
Okay. God damn it.
All right, well, just take us out.
Yeah.
You find me on Twitter at @also_Walker. Where can people find you, Cado?
At @A_Cado_appears.
How about you, Patrick?
At Patrick Klubik.
You can find Bowen, who does the theme song, at waypoint.zone/BOEN. You can send your questions to gaming@vice.com. If I had to scrawl something on the side of this building, what it would be fuck capitalism, go home.